You have to be working hard on the right investment vehicle or the right area of life. And that's what we think we've been able to find with Amazon. Welcome back, Andy. Good to have you back. You're looking nice and tan from your well-deserved, what was it, 10 to 12-day trip in Mexico. I'm actually interested in hearing about that and just what goes into a trip like that I'm looking forward to taking at some point one day. I want to say thank you to Abs for filling in the last 2 weeks. We had some really good discussion about hiring VAs the first week. I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to that if you have not. Probably one of the biggest areas of growth in our business has been through hiring team members and building teams out. And last week had a really good discussion about the future of some things that we are seeing in the e-commerce space and brand building. So Andy, welcome back. Give us the lowdown. What went into you going there, and what was kind of your biggest takeaways from the trip that you just recently had?
So yeah, like a lot of people over the last 2 to 3 years, because of COVID, because of the pandemic, folks just haven't been able to travel, right? Traditionally, for my family, we take a vacation at least once a year. The four of us, I have two children, and because of COVID and all the restrictions, we hadn't. And yeah, it was just a blessing. We were able to go to Mexico. One of the things I like about selling on Amazon is the freedom of being able to have money in that bank account to kind of choose basically wherever we want to go in the world, right? And we probably would have traveled a lot further. You know, the restrictions are still kind of out there when you travel to other countries, but we went to Cabo, Mexico, beautiful location, the first time that we'd ever been there. You know, as we were flying there together, again, I was just kind of thinking back when I first started into the workforce. My career was as a human service professional, right? And there's not a lot of money in that profession. Now, it was very rewarding, very satisfying. It's kind of mission based work. But as I continue to do that, I realized, like, hey, look, as I get older, I'm not going to have the energy that I have now. I was working with high school students. I knew that at some point I had to transition. And if I really wanted to achieve the dreams that I had for my life, actually, since I was 4 or 5, one of the dreams I had, Nate, I don't know if I ever shared it with you, was to live in a mansion. So I lived right across the street from this awesome Catholic family. They had 12 kids and they had this huge house. And so that's where I would play every day. And just being over there, being in that huge house, I just always had a dream. I wanted to live in a huge house. And I knew that I was never going to be able to realize that dream on the salary that my wife and I were earning as human service professionals. And so selling on Amazon, right, and experiencing the success. And again, it's just such a blessing that we are able as third party sellers to sell on that platform, that I now have the money in the bank where I can go on the globe and basically point to wherever I want and be able to take my family of four on vacation. And Cabo was one of these experiences. We were able to go over 10 days. We stayed at a 5-star resort. It was all inclusive. So my son was like in heaven because he's a senior in high school. He plays football, weighs 230, and he eats like a horse. And there was 24/7 food, right? And so you could order room service 24/7. There were unlimited tacos 24/7 in a little market they had there. My wife and I were able to experience, for the first time, we did couples massages. So, you know, that's kind of a thing down in Mexico. And we did it not once, not twice, but 3 times. You know, and again, I always point back to just super thankful to be able to sell on Amazon. You know, again, on the teacher salary that we were living before, we wouldn't be able to take a vacation like that. But because of the Amazon opportunity that you and I often talk about, and that's why we do this podcast, you know, we are now able to do those kind of things.
You know, I was talking to an entrepreneur locally that goes to my church actually recently, and he was saying how there's still this stigma a lot of times to entrepreneurship, working on your own business, where some people are going to kind of say, like, when are you going to get a real job type thing? Now, that's probably limited once you reach a certain level of success or have been doing it for a certain amount of time. But one of the points this person said their family member was making was that they didn't get any vacation time for them, right? Like when you work in a corporate job, you get allotted your 2 weeks or your 3 weeks, or maybe you might even make it up to your 4 weeks. But when you're running your own business, you don't get any vacation time. And this person's counterpoint to that was, you're paying for that vacation time, right? When you're working for a company, you're basically paying for your vacation time in the form of a reduced salary for those work days, right? It's all kind of a benefits package. And we kind of look at that in some ways for ourselves. But I wanted to ask you, you did work in a career for, what was it, 15, 20 years. What did you feel like at some point? Did you ever get the feeling like, you had your plan A? What was your plan B if that wasn't going to work before Amazon? If you did get let go for some reason, if there wasn't, whatever could happen, right, in a job, what was your kind of plan B up to that point?
Yeah, honestly, unfortunately, we didn't have a plan B. We either just weren't in the right circles or we weren't reading the right books. We thought that the company that we work for was going to take care of us. And basically, we thought we were going to be able to go into retirement working at that same company, which, again, if you go back to 40, 50 years ago, that's what a lot of people did, right? They stayed, whatever company they started working at, they usually ended working from there. They had these things called defined benefit plans, where you could kind of go into retirement and you would have a salary for the rest of your life as well as your medical care. We thought that. And then about 10 years into our position there, they did kind of a whoop de doo on us and they took away our defined medical benefit, which meant that we could have retired at age 55 and we would have had medical care for the rest of our life. It's almost like a golden parachute. They estimated about between 1.5 and $2 million potentially what that defined benefit means. And so that was like a wake up call for us, like, oh my goodness, we're giving our heart and soul to this company. And we thought we were going to, it was going to be reciprocated. And then boom, that was yanked from us. So that was one of the aha moments, like, okay, yeah, we need to have a plan B. What are we going to do to be able to reach the retirement goals that we have as a couple and as a family? And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that there are probably a number of people that may experience that throughout their careers.
Yeah, I was reading a book recently and there was a quote in it from an ancient Chinese parable or proverb, however, however it goes. And it says that a smart rabbit has three holes, which at first it's like, what does that mean? But basically, there is some merit to diversification, to not putting all of your eggs in one basket, essentially. And I think through, you know, a traditional corporate America job structure, that's basically what you're doing. Now you might be able to diversify a little bit by investing in some kind of 401k program, right? And kind of having some stuff stored to retirement. But a lot of times that money's hard to touch, right? You got to wait till a certain time period before you can pull it out without getting into loans and all these other structures. But it can be difficult to reach that money, right? And then besides that, there really isn't a lot there. So I think one of the things we talk about on here sometimes is that we have a brand that we've really been focusing on building equity into, and that we talk about every week here, right? Finding new products for our brand. But that's actually just one area you've talked about, Andy. You've created multiple brands through the years. You actually exited one of those brands last year. And I think that's kind of that three plus whole approach that we've taken, that we try to not put all of our eggs even to just one brand or one product or one method of selling, but some form of diversification. Now, I do think as people are getting started, you do need to hyper focus. Last week, Absalom and I were talking about building a brand and focusing on a niche and kind of becoming a master of a niche. And we talked about that a lot with our product research and early on, how you really started to focus in on some of your products and understanding those well. And you have to do that when you start. But as you do reach some form of whatever you want to call it, success or whatever, there is some merit to then making sure that that doesn't all go away because of some fluke. And on that note, I do want to talk about a trend that you've seen by visiting China and basically the future of e-commerce. I know you've said for a while that one of the things you loved the most when you were able to visit China a couple years ago was that you actually, it wasn't even just walking the trade shows and meeting suppliers. That was obviously very valuable and hard to replicate exactly just by going to Alibaba.com. But just by being in China, you actually got a sense of kind of future trends that's hard to get being here in the US. You can only read so much. about it or watch videos, it's kind of hard to find information on China. In my experience, you don't hear a lot about what's going on there all the time, except for kind of bigger news stories. So maybe walk through some of those trends that you saw and what you think that means for the future of Amazon sellers, and tying this to kind of the plan A, plan B, and what we should be focused on over the next couple of years.
Sure. So in retail, you really you want to be in Asia as much as possible because the trends there always starts there. And then it comes to Europe, it comes to America, usually about 2 to 3 years later. They're that far ahead, and again, China has built the world. That's where almost, probably 90% of products worldwide are manufactured right there in China. And if you go there, it is crazy how far ahead they are in technology. Like if you go to Shanghai, they have this crazy laser light show every night over the river. There's a river that runs through Shanghai, and every major building. So think about buildings like in New York or in Chicago. Every window and every building is in sync with this laser light show, right? And it's almost like fireworks, and they play it to music. And they do that every single night. There is no city in America that can even come close to that. That's how far ahead they are. And then when it comes to e-commerce, and this is where I think America is going, and it's because cities in China, right? A small city is like 20 million people, which is, huge, a lot larger than our cities here in the US. But eventually, the cities in the US, they only continue to grow. It's not rural areas that are getting the population, right? It's the cities that continue to grow. And because of that, because there's 20 million, 30 million, e-commerce is by far the number one way that Chinese, when they need a product, they're not going to go to a retail store to purchase it, right? They use their apps and it'll show up on their doorstep in 1 to 2 hours. Now, Amazon does have some cities like that where you can have 1 to 2 hour ordering. I think that's going to continue to increase. But if you're in China and you're walking on the sidewalk, you literally will see thousands of these electric motorcycles with these big baskets on the back. And these are all delivery people that are delivering these products, hundreds of thousands of products every single hour in these cities. I think America is definitely going to go that way. The appetite, right, for home delivery is not dying. As we continue to spend more time in Zuckerberg's metaverse, right, people don't like their lives interrupted. And you can see that on phones. If you go out in social situations, like people are just glued to their phones. I think more and more people are going to be working from home. They're going to be online, and it is an inconvenience. And Nate, you would probably say this too. I know there are times where 2 or 3 days you actually won't go to your mailbox because you do all your work from home, right, and from the computer screen. It's just the nature of our culture. Therefore, if I am in, the metaverse, or if I'm glued to the screen, and I'm not saying that that's a healthy way to be, I'm just saying it is what it is. You are going to order things from your app, from your phone. You want easy, where it's going to show up on your doorstep, whether that's food, whether that's grocery, or whether that's products, like we sell on Amazon. So I see that continuing to grow. It's not dying, although there has been some chatter that Amazon is slowing down, but it's only because right there was massive sales increase in 2020 and 2021 because everything was shut down. So now I think it's starting to normalize, and we're probably going to see a normal curve of growth when it comes to Amazon, as opposed to just a massive increase 2020 2021.
Now, I did want to touch on that. Abs and I actually talked about this, I believe, last week. But what would you say to those sellers who kind of rode the bandwagon and maybe just started selling in 2020 or 2021, so more recently, and they kind of came in this period of abnormal activity on Amazon? And I think you heard this too, Andy. I remember hearing last year people saying, hey, all the old products back from 2015 are viable again. You can launch a barbecue glove, you can launch whatever you want, and it's going to sell on Amazon. And even when I heard that, I was like, okay, that doesn't sound very sustainable long term. So, what would you say as we kind of tie this together with having your plan B in place, but then, the future of e-commerce where we're going, you're bullish on it. You're seeing growth still, but in the short term, every week we try to talk about product selection and launching on Amazon essentially. What does that mean for people between now and between the next 3 years where things will go in a normal growth pattern? But what about those products? What does that mean for product selection and what people have seen the last 2 years?
Yeah, so just going back, for those who entered into the space over the last 2 years, hopefully they didn't take the cash that they made and bought Lambos with it, or went on extravagant vacations with it, because it was definitely a cash cow, right? That we knew was not going to last, and our business actually had a dramatic increase. And what we did with that increase is we dumped it all right back into the business, right? And right back into bringing new products onto the Amazon platform. And so, like we always say, it will go in cycles, but what you need to do is, and this is, one of our favorite partners, Gay Lisby, she always says, don't eat your seed. And so, those sellers, if they were in our groups that we have, right? If they were in the different programs that we offer, they would hear us say that often, early and often. Don't eat your seed. If you want to build something special, right, you have to reinvest your profits. You have to snowball. I think back again to when you and I started, Nate, we had incomes coming in from other jobs, and we were not going to quit those jobs until our Amazon account was humming at a certain level, because we wanted to keep reinvesting, right, those profits, because we knew that if we did that, we could get to a place of freedom, as well as we could build something super special. And so that's probably not talked about enough, that there is sacrifice involved. If you want to build something that very few people have, it is not going to come easy. Otherwise, everybody would have it, right? And so there are times, and I think about early on, when you first started, when I first started, where we would be up till 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning, bagging and tagging and doing a lot of the physical work ourselves. But we knew we had to put that kind of sacrifice in to be able to get to the place of being a owner, which is the ultimate goal, right? It's not just having a job, because that's what a lot of people do on Amazon, right? They start selling on Amazon and it ends up just being a job. That's not the goal. And the goal is not to be the CEO either. The goal is to be the owner, where then you can actually help coach and manage other people, right? Who are then doing that increase. And so, thankfully, folks that are able to do that, their life may be a little bit out of balance at first, but that's how you can get to a really special place, I think.
Yeah, and there's a time when you start where you have more time than money, and then hopefully you transition to that owner phase where you basically realize that time is your most precious asset, and it's all about leveraging your money to get more time. And a lot of times that's just what different business decisions are. When we talk about hiring VAs, when we talk about making larger key employee hires like we recently did in our business, that's what it comes down to, right? Looking at where are you at in your business cycle? Have you maximized your profits early on by doing some of the hard work yourself? I mean, how many containers did you unload even all the way up until last year? I think you unloaded 30 different containers last year, probably, right? And so seems silly maybe to some people listening who only use a 3PL, but I'll tell you, the margin that we get by owning our own warehouse strategically and doing some work ourselves strategically, I guess, has saved us a lot and probably put us for some of our products in a place where our competition can't compete with us because they aren't making some of the moves that we are. I love reading about some of the kind of business titans of the past. And it's interesting how many times the differential is very, very small. I remember reading about John D. Rockefeller, right? And one of the classic stories about him, and probably gets embellished a little bit, but he would actually figure out how many oil drops perfectly were needed, or not oil drops, but kind of sealant drops to seal the oil drum was needed. And at first it was something like 40, and he got it down to 31 because 30 caused a little bit of leak. So 31 was the perfect number, right? And it was like a penny that it saved, but for millions of barrels, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is a lot of money at that time. So maybe you don't need to go that extreme, but I will say that we make some decisions in our business like that. And I think you have to do that sometimes when you're starting out. So one of the things I think most people are missing, Andy, is just some kind of plan around this, right? And we're spending a lot of time recently ourselves in our own business and in like a broader career life standpoint, whatever you want to call it, focusing on a plan of freedom, a freedom plan to look at what is our plan B, even now, because I think you can get complacent even at any level of your business or your career. Looking at that ourselves, what is our plan B? What is our freedom plan? We're looking forward to kind of rolling that out to podcasts, to everybody following us on Amazing Freedom Insider, and what our plan looks like. And we're trying to come up with a good response that we've seen through literally watching hundreds of sellers create freedom with Amazon. And we just did a 5-year anniversary with the Amazon Seller Tribe last night. And I mean, how incredible is it that we have 128 sellers in the group that are $1 million sellers out of 550 something members? I mean, the ratio alone is amazing. But all those people have essentially done what we've talked about. Many of them still work a full time job. Many others have created their plan B already and been able to transition into full time Amazon. But the level of engagement and enthusiasm we saw last night is super encouraging. And I know a lot of that, the credit can go to the hard work of them, and then Gay Lisby and Gary Ray's leadership in that group. But how amazing is that?
Yeah, I think about it every time, and this is why you and I take time out, right, to do this podcast to share a message because we still think that there's opportunity out there for folks who need a plan B, just like my wife and I did. I just got a text message last night from a friend of mine who is a teacher, and he works 3 jobs. So he teaches, and then he also works 2 other jobs in the restaurant industry. He basically is working almost every waking hour. He has a kid in college. He's got another one that's getting ready to go to college. And so he's got to be able to, help them through that. I kind of cringe, when he texts me that because I think, oh man, if you would start selling on Amazon, or if you would join our group and you would see these 128 students, right, who are selling $1 million a year, your entire life would be changed. And so, very excited about the program that we have coming up. I think it is going to help a lot of people, just like we've been able to help 550 members in our Amazon Seller Tribe, but over 128 of them sell at least $1 million a year. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, hard work at any level is commendable, but you talk about this all the time. The vehicle that you're working on is often 10 times more important than the amount of hard work that you're putting in. So you can't just work hard. You have to be working hard on the right investment vehicle or the right area of life. And that's what we think we've been able to find with Amazon and so many of these students that we've been talking about. And if you go to amazingfreedom.com/freedom, we mentioned it last week. We are putting together a program that was initially just for our tribe members that came to our 1-day event. We're opening that up. We're going to be doing a live training session. We haven't done this in years, and we've learned a lot of stuff over the last couple of years. So we're excited to put a completely new spin on this that we've never really opened up on, because a lot of it we've learned just in the last 2.5 years, going from just kind of like a low 7-figure brand to now 8-figure brands. A lot changes in between there. Our eyes have been opened up to a lot of things that we did well in the past and some things that we have improved upon dramatically. And so we're super excited to be sharing our freedom plan and what that means. You can go to amazingfreedom.com/freedom to sign up for that. Andy, glad to have you back. Cabo, Mexico sounds good, but sometimes we need to get back to strategically plan for our plan B in the future. So we got some good work that we're going to be doing this week. Looking forward to bringing that back to the podcast in future episodes. We'll catch you next week, guys, for the next episode of the Amazing Freedom Podcast. See ya.